Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Spectrum podcast. Indeed, it is where faith and sports collide. I am Jason Romano, your host today for the show. Thanks for joining us on the program today. Always check out our website. That's where I want to steer you guys first, sportspectrum.com. Ton of content there. Daily devotionals every day at 6 a.m. Articles on the intersection of sports and faith. Lots of great stuff. You can see it all. You can find it all every day. Bookmark that webpage and check it out, sportspectrum.com. And also want to tell you about our magazine. It's been going on for 30 plus years. The pillar of what Sports Spectrum is about is the magazine, and it's still going strong today. And it's dirt cheap, $18 for an entire year. $18 gets you a subscription to the Sports Spectrum magazine. Check it out. Tons of great articles and really great photographs in there. The design is so well done by our guy Aaron and John editing it, just doing wonderful work with the Sports Spectrum magazine. So check it out. You go to sportspectrum.com and subscribe. $18. Go to sportspectrum.com. Today's guest on the podcast is TV and film producer and best-selling author DeVon Franklin. Now, the new movie that DeVon is a producer of is called Breakthrough. It opens in theaters Wednesday, April 17th, and stars Chrissy Metz, who plays Kate Pearson in the NBC hit TV show This Is Us. It also features actors Topher Grace and Dennis Haysbert, among many others in this movie. An executive producer on the film is one Stephen Curry from the Golden State Warriors. And DeVon's been around. I mean, he's produced a bunch of movies, including Miracles from Heaven, that starred Jennifer Garner, as well as the film The Star, which was an animated film with Kelly Clarkson. Oprah Winfrey was in that, and Tyler Perry. So DeVon has done some great work. He's an outspoken man of faith, loves Jesus, and he's a best-selling author, written many books, including The Wait, The Hollywood Commandments, and his latest book is called The Truth About Men. But in this interview, we talk mostly about this movie, Breakthrough, and then get a little into his faith journey and his walk with the Lord and how sports and faith intersect. Really good stuff here. DeVon is not shy about his faith, and he brings his faith into the secular world and making these movies that appeal to all audiences but do not sugarcoat the gospel and the hope that is found, the love that is found in Jesus Christ. So let's take a listen to our interview. TV and film producer DeVon Franklin joins us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Take a listen. DeVon, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Glad to be on the show.
Absolutely. And the new movie is called Breakthrough, and I've gotten to see a preview of the film, and it's fantastic. I loved it. I really did. I really just want to start with that, though. Tell us about how and why this movie came about, because I know there were so many, I guess you call them God things, that happened just to get this movie made.
Oh, yeah. Truth be told, every movie that happens is a miracle. I mean, it is so hard and so difficult. Yeah. But with this particular film, I found it while I was promoting a film I produced called Miracles from Heaven. And I, met the family, Joyce and John and Pastor Jason. And when I heard their story, I was so blown away that I knew I had to, bring it to the big screen. And that process of, finding the screenwriter Grant to, setting it up at Fox and then, finding our director. And the crazy thing was that, we put our director, Roxanne Dawson, on the film in November of 2017. And the issue was that we had to start shooting in February in order to be able to shoot on a frozen lake because we knew we had to recreate the ice sequence when John fell through the ice. And the only place in North America where we could do that was Winnipeg, Canada. And so, I told the studio, I was like, listen, we got to get going. And they were like, okay, but you got to get Chrissy Metz. And, oh my goodness, getting Chrissy Metz was truly a blessing. Thankfully, she wanted to do it. And we brought her on mid-January, and we were shooting that ice sequence in February, and then started production on the entire film end of March and finished in May. So the idea that we could go from, me finding the story, it's 2016, and then within 24 months being in production was unbelievable.
That's awesome. I love it too that I saw, because we are a faith and sports podcast. It's Steph Curry is an executive producer on the film. And I know you grew up in Oakland, so I'm sensing a connection there. How did Steph get connected with this movie and connected with you on Breakthrough?
You know, he and I had met, and I met with, his team. I met with him and Jerron and Eric, who run his company, and they were talking about their desire to get into film and do things that had faith, family, and sports. And in Breakthrough, John Smith is a basketball player. And I was like, hey, man, look, if you're interested, take a look at the script. And if you want to, if you like it, then I'll make you an executive producer. And so he read it within 24 hours and said that he loved it and wanted to be a part of it. And so I made a deal for him to come on board as an executive producer. And in the same way that he's, had such a great all-star team with the Warriors, I wanted to create a great Breakthrough team. So he's a big part of that, and I'm grateful, that we can be partnered up to bring this to the world.
Breakthrough is out in theaters Wednesday, April 17th, right before Easter. It's perfect timing. What do you hope people come away from as they watch this? Because as I watched it, I'm a man of faith, but I sense that a lot of people who even may not have that faith or maybe have a different faith could come away to take away something from this film. What do you hope people will take away from this film?
The last song in the movie is by Carrie Underwood, and it's called Love Wins. And I think that is I think that is what is so strong about this story, is it really underscores the power of love. And so I want people to take away that love does win. And Joyce loved her son so much that she was unwilling to take the doctor's word for his prognosis. And that is ultimately, if she took the doctor's word, John would be dead right now. But she loved him so much that she decided she wasn't. And as a result, John is alive and well. And so I want people to walk out of the theater feeling loved. I want them to walk out being reminded that love wins. And one of the things Joyce did, which I think is so important, to speak life. I think too often we speak negative. We talk negative to ourselves. We talk negative to others. People talk negative to us. What would happen if we started speaking life? What would happen if we started speaking positive? We would see things change for the better. Breakthroughs would happen all around the culture and community. And so I want people to take that away as well.
DeVon Franklin's our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. DeVon, we ask all of our guests for their testimony when they became Christians, when they had Christ become real to them in their life. Can you share your testimony with us?
Yeah, my father died when I was, 9 years old. He died of a heart attack when he was 36 years old. And, my uncle that same year started an independent, he was a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and he started independent ministry. That same year, my father died. And so being able to have, an outlet to process my father's death by going to church was very, very helpful. And then I believe I was like 11 or 12 when I got baptized, in the church. And, I have not looked back since. And I would not be where I am if I wasn't following Christ and committed to, his call in my life. And, so many people thought that, me being Christian would hold me back from opportunity in Hollywood, but it's actually done the exact opposite. It's opened every single door that I've gone through, and I wouldn't be where I am and who I am without it.
Yeah, that faith in Hollywood, you've lived in both those worlds and even wrote a book about the Hollywood commandments and being a Christian in a secular workplace. We have so many people listening, so many sports fans, but coaches, dads, so many people who love Christ but are struggling in how to bring their faith into the workplace. Can you encourage some of those people who are maybe in that tension?
Yeah, I think the strongest way to do it is to, people look at what you do, not what you say. So it's so important to be honest about who you are based upon how you work, how you treat other people, how you live. It's not always about, going in and saying, ministering to someone verbally. Sometimes you can just minister to someone by how you work. And that has been the biggest witness that I have seen just through how I do what I do. And people will say, well, wow, we knew you were a Christian, but the way you handled this situation, it wasn't about what you said, it's what you did. So I think anyone that's struggling and trying to figure out how they can be authentic to their faith, just be loving, just be of service. Try to meet others' needs, and you will, in fact, be an incredible witness to who God is and what he can do.
DeVon Franklin's our guest here on the podcast. DeVon, this is sports as well. Tell me about sports growing up, sports in terms of how it intersects into your life and certainly with your faith. We talked about Steph Curry earlier, but just where sports plays a role in your life.
Yeah, sports is a big part of my life. I played basketball my freshman and sophomore year in high school. And, it was really a big part of my upbringing and, learning the value of team sports and learning the value of discipline and, learning the value of fundamentals. I mean, that's one of the things that I took away from basketball. And it sticks with me to this day is that you've got to learn the fundamentals. So often people want to bypass the fundamentals, to do all the things that look like, you're razzle-dazzle or to be showy. But when you learn the fundamentals, how to dribble, how to box out, how to run plays, you lay a foundation for being successful in basketball long term. And so for me, I apply that to life, learning the fundamentals of any industry that we're in. And that to me is so powerful and so important that, sometimes people want to, get to the plate. For me, I wanted to produce when I was 22, but I didn't get a chance to start producing until I was 36. And I'm so grateful for that because it took me that long to learn the fundamentals of entertainment. Learn how to develop a script, learn how to, put together a movie, learn how to navigate the studio. So fundamentals, I think, are so important. And learning that in basketball has helped transform my life.
You and I are both believers, obviously. Easter's coming up here. And I've heard you on a previous interview talk about being part of projects that have a mass appeal, but also projects that still stay true to the faith side of things. Can that message of Jesus, hope, faith, obviously, can that still be an attractive thing to a large audience as this seems to be a world, I guess, that's kind of deviating more and more away from faith and elements and Christianity?
I think that at the end of the day, people are looking for love and they're looking for acceptance. And those are the things that Christ embodied. Yeah. I think that if we try to come at people with religion, if we try to come at people with doctrine and theology before we expose them to the power of a relationship, we will fail. So I think that content that can expose people to the love of God, the acceptance of God, and what that looks like, and I think Breakthrough does that in a very organic way. Yes, I think that it will be well received, and people want it. They want it. I screened a movie last night in in Oakland, and there was a good friend of mine who is agnostic that came, and this morning sent me a text saying how much she loved the movie, how it blew her away, it touched her deeply, and to me that is the thing. I think so often we get into this idea of putting people in boxes. God doesn't put people in boxes. He doesn't. They're all his children, all of us. And so I think the moment we just operate that way and we say, hey, I want to operate in love and make a movie that can show the love of God in a way that'll bring people in, I think people will respond to it.
DeVon, last question here. Really appreciate your time on the podcast. And we ask this to all of our guests on the show. What are you learning from God right now in this season of life with the movie, your new book's out, The Truth About Men, lots of great things happening. What's God teaching you right now? What are you learning from the Lord?
Yeah, I'm learning to speak life. I think that is one of the most powerful things that I have learned through this process. Speak life, speak life. And it's really, really important because so often when we aren't feeling good or we aren't sure how something's going to work out, we can tend to speak negative over, our lives, speak negativity to ourselves. And so for me, it's really been about learning to speak life. And that's really what God has been encouraging me to do, no matter what the outcome may be, or no matter what I hope the outcome may be, just to keep speaking life. And that is ultimately one of the most powerful things I'm learning right now.
The new film is called Breakthrough. It's in theaters Wednesday, April 17th. Such a great film. Can't wait for everybody to see it. DeVon Franklin is the producer of that movie and the author as well. DeVon, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it, and wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it as well.
Many thanks to DeVon Franklin for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Again, the movie is called Breakthrough, opening in theaters Wednesday, April 17th, and starring Chrissy Metz, who plays Kate Pearson in the NBC TV hit show This Is Us. Kate plays a mom in this movie and is really, really good. And I saw this movie with my daughter, 14 years old. We watched it together, and we both enjoyed it a lot. It was a really good movie with a great, great message of hope, faith, perseverance, staying the course, staying connected to the root, to God, to Jesus in any circumstance that comes our way. And in this movie, you'll see it was one of the worst circumstances a family could ever go through, and God doing just a miracle in this family's life and in their son's life. Breakthrough, opening in theaters. Go see it Wednesday, April 17th. Thanks so much for listening and joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Go check out our website, sportspectrum.com. Give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at sports_spectrum. Tag us on social media. We'll retweet you and share you and like you and all that good stuff with anything that you want to share about Sports Spectrum, but even more this podcast interview with DeVon Franklin. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time with a brand new episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day.